Hey guys, how's it going? Seán here. So I've been checking out the Line 6 HELIX rack and floor control unit here in my studio for the last couple of weeks. I kind of missed the boat on the firmware 3.0 release a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to spend a bit of time with the unit and the firmware update because it added so many new effects and lots of cool features that I just wanted to spend a bit of time and get used to it and make a little video. So what I thought I'd do today is showcase 5 cool guitar tones that I created using the 3.0 update and kind of showcase some of the new features that I find pretty cool. Okay, so what I tried to do for this first guitar tone was recreate that cool out-of-tune tape warble style effect that you hear in a lot of lo-fi and modern pop and trap songs and stuff like that. So you might be able to hear there's some glitches, there's some warbly out-of-tuneness going on, and that's all intentional to try and get that lo-fi vibe. Okay, so let's just have a look at HX Edit and I'll show you what's going on in the patch. So I'm using the US double normal amp, set up just to be a really clean amp, maybe with the tiniest bit of grit when you dig in. For the cab, I'm using an IR of a 1x12 Deluxe Reverb from York Audio, but what you'll notice is I've got the low cut and the high cut turned up and down pretty high. So I'm cutting out basically everything below 500 Hertz and I'm cutting out everything above 2.6K, and this just creates a really mid-focused guitar tone. After that, I'm using a deluxe compressor. This is just to add a little bit of compression to the front of the note, give it that, tape compression vibe. And then all of these other effects just contribute to the lo-fi effect. So let me turn off the slap delay and all of the detune effects, and let's just hear what it sounds like. So you can hear it's a nice, clean, compressed guitar tone, but as I said, with all of the low end and the high end cut out of it. I also have a clean boost here with the Minotaur overdrive with the gain really low. It's just fattening up the single coils here on the Telecaster. So as I said, I've got a slapback delay. And next up, we've got the first of the lo-fi effects. So this is the double take block. What this normally does is it adds some variation by modulating the pitch and the timing a small bit. So it creates basically inconsistencies in the playing. And then when you blend that in with your normal guitar tone, it sounds like a double track. But what I did is I turned the dry level completely down and left the wet level at 100%. And what this does, it does add a tiny bit of latency when you're playing, but it creates those cool inconsistencies. And sounds like this. So it's really subtle. But you can hear there's a couple of glitches and there's a tiny bit of pitch glide, and that's the first lo-fi effect. Moving on, next we've got the bubble vibrato. This is a bit more obvious, but it's just creating a bit more pitch movement. So it's set to a little bit of a faster rate, and just aids with that pitch tape warble kind of thing. So next up, we've got this transistor tape delay, and like what I was doing with the double take effect, I've got the mix at 100%, got the time set almost at as fast as it can go. Feedback about 23%. I've got the wow and the flutter turned all the way up. Basically, we're just hearing the wet effect of the delay. I'm just going to play one sustained chord so you can hear it a bit more clearly, but sounds like this. Next up, we've got another transistor tape delay, and this is just set up to be a really atmospheric delay effect. Because this sort of tone lends itself well to just nice sustained chords and stuff like that, I find having a delay at the end just kind of smoothens out the whole tone. You can see on the HX control, I've got a foot switch set up to be a self oscillation control. So if I hold a nice chord and press this button, we get some lovely self oscillations. And lastly, this is one of the new effects introduced in firmware 3.0. This is the poly pitch effect. So I've got the interval on this set to 16 semitones above. Yeah, so that's the poly LoFi tone. Okay, so next up I've got a patch I called My Iron Pitch. Some of you might be able to guess where I was going with this tone. So this preset is using the poly pitch effect again. This time it's set to be an octave above. Quickly going over the rest of the patch, I've got a compressor, 40% mix, so we're getting a bit of compression, but we're leaving the front end of the note through a little bit. Using a Minotaur again as just a clean boost. A Elephant Man delay. This just adds a nice little analog delay before the front of the amp. Then I've got a phaser. For the amp, I'm using the A30 Fawn on the normal channel, IR of a AC30 style 2x12 Alnico blue cab. A bit of room reverb, a bit of studio compression at the end just to even everything out. A bit of EQ just to tidy it up a little bit. And then I've got a tape delay and a reverb in parallel. Alright, so next up I've got a preset called Phat Royal Clean, which basically uses the new amp that was introduced in HELIX 3.0, the US Princess amp. So this is a model of a Fender Princeton style amp. So I've got the drive turned down quite a bit, but I've got the master and the channel volumes turned up quite a lot then. Bass turned down a lot, mid at about 7 and the treble at about 6.5. First up I've got the Minotaur again, set up as a cleaner boost, but with the gain dialed in a little bit more so that it's a bit more reactive to my playing. So let me take off a lot of these effects and just show you what the amp sounds like on its own. Just the amp, a little bit of spring reverb, and then a little bit of EQ at the end and a studio compressor as well, just to kind of like hold the whole thing together. So I've set it up to be just a really, really bare bones pedalboard platform style amp. First up, I've got the Minotaur. Just adds a little bit of hair and pushes the mids that little bit more. Next up, we've got a compressor. This is after the drive block because I don't want the amount of overdrive to be restricted. I'd rather the overdrive pedals be a bit more reactive to my playing and then have the tone evened out after that. Next up, I've got a little Bucket Brigade delay. I've set it to the longest delay time possible with this particular Bucket Brigade delay, and it just adds the tiniest bit of dimension when you're playing. Next up, I've got a harmonic tremolo. This kind of has that uni-vibe style quality to it, but it's a little bit more unique. I won't go into the science of how a harmonic tremolo works in this video, but it sounds pretty lovely. Moving on to some of the delay and reverb effects, I've got a transistor tape delay on this first path here, and I've got a reverb on the second path in parallel. So the reverb is set up to be quite an atmospheric modulated reverb. I've got a bit of EQ just to filter out some of the low end, blended in here with the mixer. So overall, I was just going for that really nice compressed clean tone, but also that reacts very well to dynamics. And I think I've achieved that by placing the compressor after the drive pedals and a LA studio compressor after the amp altogether to get a little bit more glue over everything and the effects. But overall, you get something that responds very well to your playing dynamics. so this next preset, I've called it the PS drone machine, PS standing for poly sustain, which is another new effect that was introduced in 3.0. And basically this is like a freeze style effect. Place it anywhere in your signal chain, and whatever you play into it at the time that you press the foot switch will be frozen and held and sustained infinitely until you turn it off. So what I've done in this preset is I've set up two different paths that are completely independent of each other. First path up top here is where I have just my general amp tone. So I'm using a matchstick channel 1 amp here. Got the Minotaur as a clean boost in front again. Impulse response for cabinet duties. Bit of tremolo, bit of EQ, bit of LA Studio comp at the end, and some atmospheric reverb. This is what this first path sounds like. Now on the second path, you can see I've got an EQ block here, which is cutting off a little bit of the high end. This is because it's just the DI signal that's being processed on this path. I've got the poly sustain, a transistor tape delay set with really high feedback, nice amount of high end flutter as well. I've got a reverse delay and also a highly modulated reverb at the end of this path. So you can see I've got these two volume blocks at the start of each signal path. Basically what these do is I have them assigned to foot switches on the floor controller, and they act as master mutes for the input of these separate paths. So this way I can unmute my guitar tone and I can just play the top path. But then if I want to input some signal into the drone, I just unmute my drone input. Now you can hear underneath all the reverb and delay swells underneath what I'm playing. But say I want to sustain that and I want to create a drone that will sustain forever. I just play something, press the poly sustain foot switch, and now what I've just played is being held by the poly sustain block, and that will decay basically until I switch it off. Now if I mute my drone input, I've got my guitar input unmuted, I can play over this, and yeah, sounds really cool. So this last guitar tone is called Single Coil Rage. I'm not a huge high gain guitar tone guy, but something I do love is artists like Biffy Clyro, Rage Against the Machine, Nothing But Thieves. They're all artists that use like single coil guitars, but get like huge guitar tones. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to go for with this preset. So for the amp, I'm using the Placator Dirty, which is kind of like a hot rodded Marshall Friedman style amp. I've got the gain dialed into 6, but I have a foot switch assigned where I can increase that to 7.8 just to get a little bit more gain. I'm blending two different impulse responses from York Audio here. I've got some EQ just kind of shaping each cab before they join back together here in the mixer. This one here is using a SM57 and the top one is using a 160 style ribbon mic. Got a little bit of room reverb, and I'm using the Horizon gate, which I'll go over in just a second, but this is what it sounds like. So for the amp, I've got the Phat switch assigned to a foot switch here. Really fattens up single coils, which is really nice. I also have the ripple and the sag controls dialed in quite a lot. And what I think these are doing mostly is emphasizing a lot of the sub harmonics that these Marshall style amps generate. And for like lower string heavy riffs and stuff, this can add like quite a lot of weight underneath your riff. Pay attention to just the low end while I play this riff, and you'll notice that even though there's quite a bit of gain dialed in, the low end just stays really, really big, and yeah. So going over the Horizon gate, this was introduced in firmware 3.0, and it's kind of like an intelligent high gain gate. Basically what it does is it filters the high end of the note before the low end. So when using high gain, it kind of gets rid of all the harsh noise that you don't want and keeps all the important stuff that you do want, which is like the fundamental of your guitar note. So have a listen to how this note decays with this gate on. you'll notice that the low end is still nice and clean. Let's compare that to this hard gate, which is a bit more of a traditional gate. You can hear that the gate wants to like clamp down on the note a lot sooner. And while this is great for like djenty stuff, you know, I can't play djent, but you know, you get the picture. For more lower gain stuff that you still want to tidy up and be nice and clean, this horizon gate is really, really cool. I've also got another poly pitch effect here. This is set up to be an octave below for just some heavy riffage. I could use a monophonic pitch effect, which has been in the Helix for quite a while, but I chose the poly pitch because I still want to be able to play chords while I'm riffing, and this allows me to not be like restricted by the monophonic pitch effect. So here's what this sounds like. Lastly, if we look at the controller, I've got this low and high cut assigned to a foot switch. This is basically trying to recreate that, you know, stereotypical radio style effect that's used in a lot of rock and metal tracks, where you'd have the riff filtered first, and then when the band comes in, it's a bit cheesy, it's a bit stereotypical, but it's really cool to be able to take some of those production tricks that you'd use in the studio to a live scenario on your Helix. Alright, so that was a quick look at 5 cool guitar tones that I dialed in using the Line 6 Helix. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button, and yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, if you want to see some more content from me, please consider subscribing as well, and really helps the channel out. And also hit that little bell icon so that you can be notified when I put out some new videos. Alright, so thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.